At the end of a session this week, a client asked me a question that I actually hear pretty often. He asked, every time I raise my arm, my shoulder pops. It doesn't hurt, but I feel a little clunk and it makes a weird noise. Does it really matter if it pops, if it doesn't hurt? Now this client has full shoulder range of motion, no pain, and no trouble doing anything that he likes to do. So on the surface, the popping doesn't seem to be a big deal. And quite honestly, sometimes it's not. Sometimes a pop is just a pop. Joints can pop from time to time, and that is totally normal, not a big deal at all. But his shoulder popped every time he raised his arm. And that is a red flag. When a joint consistently pops or clunks, it's a sign of shoulder instability. Now, shoulder instability means that the ball of the shoulder joint isn't staying securely inside its socket while the arm is moving. To put it simply, something is wrong with your shoulder support system, causing the arm bone to move excessively or in an uncoordinated way, which results in that popping or clicking or clunking. Even if it doesn't hurt yet, it will lead to bigger problems down the road if it's left unchecked. All right, so there are several injuries that can contribute to shoulder instability, and I'm just going to talk about 5 common ones now. The first 2 I clump together, and they are a history of shoulder subluxation for 1, or dislocation for 2. And in both of these cases, the ball of the shoulder joint slips partially out of socket with subluxation or fully out of socket with dislocation. And in both situations, the soft tissue has been stretched to the point of being damaged. And that overly stretched soft tissue is what normally keeps your shoulder stable. So if you think of this as like a rubber band that's been stretched past its capacity, it might still function, but it'll be wobbly and very unreliable. Now, the third injury is poor posture. Slouching messes with how your shoulder blades support your shoulder joint by changing the position of the shoulder blades resting on the rib cages. Now, these seemingly small changes in position throw off the mechanics in your shoulder. The result for the shoulder mechanics is similar to trying to throw a ball while you're on a wobble board. Your balance is just a little bit off. So now this fourth injury is your rotator cuff injuries. Rotator cuff muscles act like dynamic stabilizers. And if they've been weakened or torn, then they'll move too much and or in an awkward way. So if we think about this as like a flat tire on your car, so you'll have all 4 wheels, but they're not all doing what they're supposed to do, and it's now hard to control your car. And that's the same thing with your shoulder. So now the 5th injury is a labrum tear. Now a labrum helps to deepen the socket, and it helps create a suction cup movement that pulls the ball of your shoulder joint into the socket. So when it's torn, the joint loses that snug fit and allows that ball to move all over the place and way too much in that socket. So those are some of the injuries that can throw off the mechanics of your shoulder joint. Now let's talk specifically about why it matters if your shoulder pops every time you raise your arm. Okay, picture your bathroom door. Now, let's say you forgot to install one of those door stoppers, and you know those ingenious items that help you prevent the doorknob from hitting your wall? So at first, the doorknob might just gently tap the wall. No harm done. But over time, that doorknob keeps hitting the wall. Eventually, you end up with a dent and maybe even a doorknob-shaped hole in your wall. And your shoulder works the same way. When the joint mechanics are off and the arm bone bangs into the socket, or that ligament may be snapping over ridges to produce those pops and clicks, even if they're painless now, that rogue motion will snowball into one of these three things. One, an uneven wear and tear on the joint, also known as arthritis. Just like with car tires wearing out faster when they're misaligned, the shoulder will wear out more quickly with poor mechanics. Or number two, you could develop bone spurs, which are the body's way of reinforcing bone that's being repetitively hit, or if a muscle is being pulled on that bone. It's kind of like a scab, but it's more permanent, and unfortunately, bone spurs are often far more painful. Or the last thing that can happen with prolonged shoulder instability is a rotator cuff irritation or tear, since that pop or that clunk is the sound of the tendon rolling over a bony ridge or being pinched and having those two bones bump into each other. Eventually, one of the shoulder tendons will fray. Not to mention that poor mechanics leads to overworked muscles. So if you picture a rope that's being rubbed against the same spot over and over and over again, eventually that rope will tear. So if your shoulder pops every once in a while and it doesn't hurt, it's no big deal. Please don't rush to anybody. But if it pops every time you do something like putting away the dishes or throwing a ball or doing anything overhead, it's worth getting looked at. Even without pain, consistent popping usually means something isn't moving the way that it should. And the sooner you catch it, the easier it is to fix. I hope that this video helps explain that weird shoulder noise. And if it matters in your situation, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below. Or if you want to talk to me about your specific shoulder situation or shoulder question, check out the comments below and we'll put a link into my clinic, and that way you can quickly get a hold of me. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope that you're having a great day.